Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan from stepbysteppainting.net, and this acrylic painting tutorial is going to show you how to paint a Christmas train. This is on a black canvas, a 9 by 12 black canvas. So I have a canvas that is painted black, and I already have my train drawing transferred to the canvas. I'm going to put a link in this video for how to draw the train. So the train drawing of this tutorial is separate. So if you're using the Traceable, you can continue. If you want to learn how to draw the train, you can click on that link and learn how to draw the train. So my train is in the lower part of the canvas. And the first thing I'm going to do is paint my train in. So when we paint on a black canvas, we want to make sure that our colors are going to show up against the dark background. And a lot of times colors are a little too see-through. So I like to use titanium white with my colors. So I'm loading my palette with each of the colors I'm going to use to paint my train in, and each of those colors are going to be double loaded with white, except for this yellow, because that yellow is very opaque. But the green and the red, those two colors, are going to be double loaded with the white so that those colors show up against the black background and nice and bright. So it's going to give that kind of a chalkboard effect when I do that. So I'm using a 3/8 inch angle brush. You can also use a flat brush for this. This one is in the Princeton Velvet Touch set of brushes that I link in the tutorial. And so the first thing I'm going to do is double load that brush with the red deep hue color and the white. And so about equal amounts. And when you reload, you can reload different amounts if you want to kind of have a varied effect. But I'm going to start by painting the rectangular area on the left side of the locomotive of the train. And I'm going to do all up and down strokes, except for around the wheels. I can do kind of a curved stroke. But for the most part, I want it to go all up and down. And so I'm just filling that in. If you want a little bit of that black showing through to give it that chalkboard effect, you can, or you can do it solid. That's up to you. You can also wait for it to dry and do a second coat, especially if you want it to show up much brighter against that black. Another coat will make it look super bright. So I'm just painting that in solid. And remember, when you go to reload, you can grab different amounts of the red and the white. I wouldn't do too much white on the brush because the white might take over too much, because we still want it to look red and not the white mixed with the red to make it look like light red. I'm painting over my circles a little bit just so I don't have to go around it. That was just kind of my choice to do that. And I'm going to do a little bit extra white right here at the top. I'm just going to kind of gently drag that white down. Kind of gives it an interesting look at the top. So then we're just going to continue on painting our train. And right here we have a curved part. It's going to be a pattern of green, red, and this right here, because it's curved, I'm going to paint in a curved direction. So instead of up and down, I did curved, and the angle brush does that stroke very nicely. It's just 2 strokes on a couple coats of paint, and then you do a curved direction. So I didn't rinse my brush transitioning to this green. If it was overloaded, I would have rinsed it and wiped it off, but there was not a lot of paint on my brush, so I just grabbed the green, and I'm going to continue on painting the other parts of the train. So this top piece I did green, and this one's going in a horizontal direction. Green, same thing. This green is a translucent color, so if I didn't load it with the white, it would not show up against the black very well. So loading it with the white is helpful for it to show up. But if I want to kind of get a varied look, so if I wanted some areas to be darker, I may not load as much white on my brush. Maybe for like these stripes right here, if I wanted them to be darker, not much white. Or if I wanted them to be lighter. See how the difference, see what happens when you add that white in there? It gives it that chalkboard effect, and it also makes it brighter. If you don't like the look of the pastel, you can always do a first coat white, let that white dry a little bit, and then do the green over it. And you're always welcome to change the colors in the tutorial. So if you want to be very creative with this train and do different colors on it, that is definitely something that you can do. And for these, again, curved strokes, letting that green and white just kind of blend together and do their own thing. And so I'm just going to continue here painting all the different shapes in my train. So just take it shape by shape. I don't like to overblend my colors. I like the unblended look, so that white just kind of blends, but not all the way to a solid color. I outlined that top part just to define that area. And I'm just going to continue on painting each shape of my train. Don't worry about the details yet, just concentrate on filling each of the shapes in. And occasionally, if your brush gets overloaded, because it's a small brush and we're painting smaller areas, you may need to rinse and kind of start over with your brush. That's what I did just now. So this piece right here, I'm painting in, again, green and white. Feel free to change your brush too. If the area is too small for this brush, you can always transfer to like a small round brush. So right here, I grabbed my little 4 round brush for this little piece right here, the little half circle piece, and I'm filling that in, kind of varying the colors. So maybe this part's got to have a little bit darker at the bottom so it kind of stands out. And I'm just going to continue on painting each shape. I can always grab a little bit of white and kind of gently outline some of the shapes so they stand out. I just think it reminds me so much of like a chalkboard. If I was painting a design on a chalkboard and how that would look, the colors would be vibrant and kind of a pastel color because of the white base, and maybe a little bit of that black is showing through, and that's okay. It's fun to work on a black canvas. It gives you a different technique, and you don't have to really worry about painting the background because the background's already there. And so it's a quicker painting too because the background's already painted in. So for the cargo car, I did green for the base and then red at the top. I did horizontal strokes for that. Again, double loading your color in the white and just filling that shape in, utilizing the round brush if needed to outline it. Or you can utilize the angle brush if you need to do some outlining. So this bottom piece I did red. This bottom piece I did red as well. And next I'm going to paint the wheels in. So the wheels, I definitely used a number 4 round brush, and the color Naples Yellow. I did some red and white on there as well, but I first did the Naples Yellow. So this particular yellow, not all yellows are opaque, but this particular one is very opaque. So I don't have to double load it in the white. It goes on very brightly, a nice solid layer. So basically I'm just taking that yellow and I'm doing all of my wheels, just outlining each of those circles. So I have the 2 big circles on the left and I have the smaller circles on the right. And hopefully your circles are better than my circles. My circles got all wobbly for some reason. I started thinking of the Island of Misfits where the train has the square wheels. I figured it might be easier to do square wheels instead of circle wheels since my circles came out all wobbly. Hopefully yours turn out better than mine. And then I did the spokes. So I did the little dot in the center and then the lines that go in a circle direction. If you wanted to do gold instead of this golden yellow color, gold tends to be a little see-through on the canvas. You can try it, but maybe paint the wheels white first, let the white dry a little bit, and then go back over with the gold paint. That will give you that metallic look, or even silver. Any of the metallic colors are generally see-through paints. They look nice when the first layer is white, and that's how they will stand out and show up. Unless you want that translucent look, then you wouldn't do the first layer white. So there's lots of things you can, little things you can do differently to the colors in this. So then I went in and did the inside of those circles with the red, so giving the wheels some more color. This is by no means a realistic train. It's kind of a representation of a toy Christmas train, so you can really be very creative with this. You don't have to make it look realistic. Lots of fun different decorations you can add to your train. I will be adding Christmas lights, a wreath, presents in the cargo train, and at the very end I added a candy cane on it as well. So there's lots of creative directions you can go with this. So I did red on the inside of those circles, and then I took the white, and I didn't want to do white all the way around. I just wanted to kind of highlight the top part of the wheel. So I just outlined part of the circle at the top. And then I did the spokes. So some of the spokes towards the top, just to brighten up the wheel, give it some different color variation. And then we have to connect our cargo train to the front train. So I just grabbed the red and the white, kind of painted that rectangular piece in, and then utilized the black for that piece. And I'm just going to continue painting my train in shape by shape, detail by detail. We have the majority of the shapes painted in, so I am next going to do the grill in the front, and that one is gray. So I mixed white with a teeny bit of black. You only need a little bit of black to make the gray, especially since we want it to stand out against the black background. So a light gray is recommended. So I'm just outlining the lines. So I outlined the shape first, and I did diagonal lines for the inside part. I can utilize that black to kind of create some contrast in there, but for the most part it's just an outlined shape. And the front part of the train right here where that light is going to be, so I painted that gray. If you wanted to do the grill in silver, again you can try the silver, but I recommend doing the white first and then adding the silver on top. Next, I'm going to do the windows. So I'm going to get the brush rinsed off. I'm still using that number 4 round brush. So for the windows, I did Mars Black. So a little bit of black on the brush. I always recommend adding a teeny bit of water to your black because the black tends to be very thick, but adding a little bit of water helps loosen that black paint so that you can control it easily. That paint flows a little bit better. But you don't want too much black because if I'm doing these windows, we don't want it dripping down the canvas. That would not be fun either. So I did a little rectangle on the right, and the shape on the left of that is going to be a square. If you're not confident about your shape, you can draw it with chalk or pencil first and then fill it in. That's always an option. But again, it's a toy train. It does not have to be perfect. And I'm just filling this square shape in. So I have my window or windows, and I will also outline it in white to give it some contrast. So I'll show you how I did that in a second. So I'll rinse and dry to transition to that white. You always want to make sure you dry your brush when you're changing colors. So I always have like a soft towel handy to dry that real quick. And when you dry your brush, you want to make sure you wipe the ferrule, the part where the bristles touch that metal piece, so that water doesn't drip down into your bristles and flood your paint. And all I did right there was outline you can do the outer or the inner part of the shape, it doesn't matter, with the white. That gives it some contrast. So now it looks like we have a window. And since I have white on this brush, I just did some loose outlining on this top piece. And you can kind of loosely outline wherever you think there might need to be a little bit of contrast, or we want our shape to stand out a little bit. Just don't want to go crazy and outline everything. And I took that white and I did some few like curved strokes at the top of my train. Gives it some form because I'm doing it in a curved direction, but also highlights that top part of the train. So very lightly, you don't want to go overboard with that white. And so I'm going to do the presents next, and I introduced a new color to my palette. This is Cobalt Blue. Cobalt is generally an opaque color, but I added white to it anyway just to get that blue to be lighter and brighter. And so I did Cobalt Blue and white, and I just did like a little square that's sticking out on this part of the train. And I'm going to do a few different shapes in here. If you want to add purple to your palette, you can. I decided to just make my purple on my palette, so I mixed the cobalt with the red deep color and a little bit of white again, so that will stand out. It's kind of a muddy purple, so if you wanted like a bright pretty purple, you can just grab one from your collection of paints. Again, you can always change the colors in these. So I just did a rectangular present, and then I'll do a third one in here as well. I'm getting my other brush rinsed off and set aside so it's not sitting in my water cup very long. And so the third present I'm going to do with the red, make it a little bit shorter to freshen up my red on the palette here real quick. I like these little Liquitex Basics tubes because they are smaller. You can just grab it real quick, accessible. You have tons of colors to choose from. They don't last long for the white and the black and the most common colors, but all the other little random colors that you only need like a tiny bit for a painting, I find it useful. And so we're going to make these look a little bit more like presents. So still using that round brush, I grabbed the white and I did lines on my present. So I did vertical line and a little tiny little bow thing at the top. And we'll do horizontal line as well. So maybe loosely outlining the shape of the box. Such a small area to work with. If you want to be more detailed with these presents, you're welcome to, but I did very, very basic generic presents. So there we have it. We have presents in the cargo car. And we're going to continue on and add more details to our Christmas train. We're going to Christmasify it. And I'm going to do lights. So the lights, I did 4 round brush starting with the Mars black, and I did the strands first. So I did bumpy lines for the strands of the lights, and I did it on the locomotive and the cargo car train part of the train. I did bumps, and I also introduced primary yellow to my palette because these are going to be colored lights, and so I need different colors on my palette. So I did dots with the yellow, so I did dot, dot, dot with space between the dots, and I'm just doing one color at a time. So then I did blue dots and rinsed off between each of those colors, and then I did my next color dot. And these will be the red dots. If I wanted to be more detailed, I could make them maybe bigger. Maybe I can put a white dot in the middle of the color dot. That'll make it look brighter. But because it's such a small area, I kind of left it simplified, and then I did a green dot as well. And so next I'm going to do the wreath on the side of my front train. So with the wreath, I do a circle first. So this is just the green, and then I can utilize my yellow, my primary yellow on my palette to kind of make a different looking green, a brighter green. So I double loaded, and I can use white as well, especially if it's not showing up. You can triple load your brush in the green and the yellow and the white, and I did little X's. So all I'm doing is painting little X's, going in a circle because I painted that circle first so that I could actually form a circle and not a square, and just little textured strokes going in a circular direction is going to create your textured wreath. And I can go back in and add some more maybe darker color to give it some contrast, but for the most part it's going to be a very simple basic wreath. I can wait for this to dry before doing the little red dots, or I can be impatient and go ahead and put the red dots in there, and it seems to be working out fine. So I'm just taking that red and doing little dots. If I want to do a bow, because there's not a lot of contrast in that area because the back of that is red anyway, mixing red and white together to make a brighter red is going to let your bow stand out. Next, I'm going to paint the rail, and so I'm going to switch to my angle brush here and make a gray on my palette. Light gray, so about 3 parts white to 1 part black, but does not have to be exact, just enough so that color will show up. And I'm just going to take my angle brush and do a horizontal line. There should be a teeny tiny bit of space below your wheels. And so I just did a horizontal line, and because my wheels were wobbly and not even at the bottom, my rail ended up having to kind of be a little not exactly horizontal, but that's okay. So horizontal line using the angle brush, and kind of a maybe a little bit thick line. You can change the thickness if you want it thicker or thinner, but I did mine a little bit thick. And then I went in with my round brush and did little vertical strokes for the other parts of the rails, the horizontal beams of the rails. So I did that, but since my line was not exactly horizontal, we don't see all the little vertical spokes. And I actually went back in there with that yellow and made sure my wheels were actually touching the rail. But this could also be a painting where our train derails from the rail, if that's the direction you want to go with it. So also a fun little detail with this is a very minor detail, but I wanted to make it look like parts of the train were shining. And so what I'm doing with my round brush here and the white, very small amount of paint on my brush, I'm doing very tiny little diagonal lines that are in kind of a group on the upper left of my wheels. So just very kind of flick the brush very lightly. Not a lot of paint on the brush, using the very tip of the brush. These are tiny lines. You don't want those to be thick at all. Very tiny. You just kind of flick the brush. So right here, if I want it to look like it's shining, so I kind of slightly outlined it with the white first. Slight outlining for this corner, little diagonal strokes. This is a detail you can skip if that's not working for you. If you can't get your strokes to be that tiny and thin, you need a steady hand for that. You can definitely skip it. Then I'm going to show you how I did the light in the front of the train. So same thing, but bigger strokes. Little bit of paint on the brush. This is like a dry brush style because there's tiny amounts of paint on the tip of my brush. I'm just flicking the brush in an angled direction. So I did white, kind of a triangular area. And then I grabbed my yellow and I went back there with the yellow. See how it kind of like disappears on the right side? So kind of a little bit more pressure on the left, the kind of the angled part of it. And then it just kind of wisps away and into the black part. And then white in the middle to make that middle brighter. So a little bit extra white right there in the middle. And then yellow. The yellow was on the whole part of it, but there's a little bit extra white right there in the middle to make that bright. Again, this technique works when there's only teeny tiny bits of paint on the brush. I'm only loading that white right there on the tip of the brush, and I'm outlining that shape right there to make that right part of it bright. And we have the light. So this is a good stopping point if you want to take a break, because we reached the halfway point of this painting And the second half of this painting tutorial will show you how I did all of the Christmas tree branches in the top portion of the painting. So I recommend you get some fresh water, and we are going to go ahead and get started on this portion. So I am freshening up my green deep permanent and titanium white, and we can utilize the primary yellow too to make our branches. So the branches are like a variety of different greens on the palette. I'm going to start by mixing green and white together about equal parts, and I'm using my angle brush for this. So to make pine needle branches, this is what I do at least. I like to, and because it's black, we got to do the white, the black background, so the white shows up. I do the middle line piece first. So I did a branch from the left to the right. It's got to be a thin line, so use the tip of your brush to create your thin line. Then I grabbed a little bit of yellow just to get my green to look different than the other greens in my painting. I'm starting on the tip of the branch, and I'm doing little strokes, little diagonal strokes using the very edge of my angle brush. And because I'm working from the left to the right, the branches, or the little pine needles that are going this way, are overlapping the previous row of pine needles. So I'm doing the pine needles kind of like one row at a time. And as I go to reload my brush, I'll grab different amounts. So see how those are overlapping right there, the previous ones? They show up better because I added a little bit extra white to my brush. And I'm just doing little tiny diagonal strokes working from the left to the right in the branch. And I can go back over some of them and do a couple different strokes over them, but for the most part I'm just going to do one layer of paint for each of these branches. So I'll demonstrate that again. So I do my middle line first, so I guess this line I can have go down this way, and then start at the end, do little diagonal strokes. I'm just using that tip of the brush. I'm not applying pressure, I'm not pressing hard to where my bristles get smashed on the canvas. It's very, very light the way I'm holding this brush, and I'm only using that tip of it. And as I go to reload, I reload in a different variation of that green. So I might grab just the green one time, or I might grab a little bit more yellow the next time, or a little bit more of the white. So I'm going to go in and paint each of the pine needle branches. So this one, it's going to kind of curve down. I'm going to start on the end and work my way up. Eventually, once you kind of get the hang of your strokes, it'll go a lot faster, and you can take your time and go very slow, or you can just go fast and kind of make your pine needles look more expressive. So that's up to you how detailed or kind of loose you want it to look. And just remember, when you go to reload, just different amounts of green and white and yellow. That'll make your pine needles have variations in color to make that texture look like it's standing out. So this step does take quite a bit of time. We're doing a lot of different little pine tree branches, Christmas tree branches. So if you want to simplify it, you can just do maybe a few branches, or maybe like one with ornaments, or you can make it more of a fuller tree by doing more branches. So it's up to you. And some branches like that one, it stemmed out into like a Y, and then I'm going to fill each of those in. So that's another thing you can do to create some variety in your pine needle branches. I'm actually going to go silent here for a little bit as I finish this step. So it's just the same technique, but creating variety in your branches with the stems and the colors. You can overlap your branch if you want. So this one's going to be slightly overlapping that one that's below it. Just when you do overlapping, or if you do overlapping, try to change the color. So this one I purposefully added a little bit more white to my brush just so that it will stand out. See how those pine needles are overlapping, that one that's on top of it, the pine needles right there at the end. A little bit more white on my brush so that it will stand out. Next, I'm going to transition to the ornaments. So for the ornaments, I did use the round brush. I'm going to rinse this one off, grab my round brush, and I'm going to start with the Cobalt Blue color. So I'm going to mix Cobalt Blue with a little bit of white just to help with the opacity of the color. And I'll do circles. So basically, we are painting circles for our ornaments, and you can place your circles wherever you want on the Christmas tree. This is supposed to represent kind of the bottom area of the Christmas tree, assuming our train is going around the Christmas tree or in some kind of formation by the Christmas tree. So I'm going to do 2 blue circles. And our circles do not have to all be the same size. Maybe some are slightly bigger. The color can be slightly darker from the previous one. So I made this blue just a tad bit darker. And we're not doing the highlights yet. We're just doing a solid circle. And then I will do a red one here. This circle did not want to be a circle for some reason. So the red, and you can do so this one is going to need a branch to hang on later. So I painted the circle, and when I was done finishing the ornament, I did a branch above it so that it can look like it's actually hanging from a branch. So like I said, you can put your ornaments wherever you want. You do not have to do all circle ornaments. You can do different shapes. You can do a candy cane if you want. And then I did an orange, so red and yellow on my palette for an orange ornament. If you didn't want to mix your colors on the palette, you can always grab any color in your collection of acrylic paint colors and do different colors. So that one was a smaller one. And then I decided to do a teardrop shape ornament that's purple. So I mixed the red and blue together with a little bit of white to do a purple ornament. And this one's going to be like a teardrop shape. This one's going to be right here. So a different shape makes it look a little bit more interesting. Then I'm going to show you how to do the highlights on these ornaments. So this part might be a little bit intimidating, but it's actually quite simple to highlight ornaments. My paint's not dry all the way, and that's going to kind of work in our favor. But I'm going to start with the white. So rinse brush, load with the white, and on the left side of each of your ornaments, so starting with this teardrop shape, I just loosely outline the inner left side of it. And then I did some strokes on the right side and just kind of let that blend with the purple so it's not as bright. So you can see we have a brighter part on the left and then kind of a little bit of a bright part on the right. So it's going to be different with the circle ones. For the circle ones, load it with the white, starting on the left side, and we'll do like a curve and then like little zigzag lines that kind of go in the middle. And then on the right part, a little curve that's not as bright. So I'll do it again on the left part, highlight with little zigzags, and then a little curve on the right part. We can kind of let it blend with the right part. You may need to rinse your brush or just wipe it off between ornaments, especially since I grabbed blue on that brush and I'm going to do my red ornament. I don't want my blue getting in the red. So the red, I did that on the lower right part, kind of did it opposite. This one I did differently. I did kind of these curved little expressive things that kind of go around the ornament, and you can see what happened. I just little expressive strokes kind of in the middle and on the left, upper left and right part is a little bit brighter. And didn't even think about it, just kind of did it really fast, and it kind of gives it that shiny look. And I'm doing the same thing to my little orange one. Again, it helps when the color of the ornament's not dry all the way, so that white kind of blends a little bit. And also, you don't need a lot of white on your brush to do that effect. You don't want it to be super bright. It's got to be kind of muted a little bit. And then I'm going to do the little holder or the top piece of the ornament, and I did that with gray, so white and black mixed together to make kind of a light gray. And I did one little stroke on the top of each of the ornaments. So just taking that one little thick stroke is all you need, and then a very thin line, so same color, but just using the tip of the brush to create a thinner line and just doing the little hook. So that red one, I said I was going to do a branch that's holding it. It doesn't look like it's just floating in midair. So that one. You can do that with silver if you want. The silver may not show up though, so you might have to do white first, let the white dry, and then do your silver. And I'm just going to quickly add my branch over here to my red ornament. Next, I'm going to demonstrate how to do the lights, the little blurry, bright lights that you see in the painting. If you wanted to simplify this, I suppose you can skip the lights. It kind of makes it look a little bit more clean without the lights, but lights are always fun. I do lights differently depending on the painting, but this time around I'm going to use my finger. So I'm using primary yellow with a little bit of white, and I'm just taking my index finger, and you notice I had a towel handy because I want to wipe it off a little bit. You don't want a lot of paint on your brush, so when you're taking this and forming a circle, it should be very dim. It should not be bright and like a solid, it shouldn't look like an ornament. It should be see-through and blurry. So if you wanted to do like different colored lights, you can take your finger and kind of wipe it off with the towel and change the color. But I decided to keep it consistent and just do did a few blue ones and green ones, but I did mostly yellow because the yellow is going to look pretty and bright. But definitely if you want to do different colors, you can. So it should be very, very dim at this point, and we're going to build up on that to make it brighter. So little blurry dots all over your tree, wherever there's kind of openings in the tree. I didn't do very much over the branches, just kind of in between the branches. And then grab your round brush, double load it in yellow and white, and make a little dot in the center of your blurry dots, and then take your finger and smear that. So we're building up on these lights and we're making them brighter. So you can see the effect that's happening when I do the little paint mark and I take my finger and smear that, but I don't smear it to, it's kind of a smaller circle inside of that bigger circle, and that is creating that glowing effect. And I can continue building that up. So I can go in and again add another bright dot, smear that, add a little bright dot. And the more you kind of add to it, the brighter it gets. But you want your center just to be a white dot without smearing that, so you can see what happens when I add that white dot in the center of all of those. That makes the center of your light the brightest part of that circle, and that is how we did the glowing effect. So I'm building up some of these a little bit brighter just to create some variety in my lights, but not all of them have to be the same brightness. Maybe some of them are kind of further back into the tree and they're not as bright or as visible, and maybe some of them are extra bright because they're kind of closer in the foreground of the painting or closer to the viewer. And then I can go in and add more lights if I want. Lights are fun. Create some really pretty magical effect in our painting. And next I'm going to show you how I did the smoke that is coming out of the train. So this is going to be a watered down white. So freshen up some titanium white if you need to, but I'm grabbing that white and I'm using my brush to apply water in there. See how I'm watering it down to a watercolor consistency. In fact, maybe even thinner than a watercolor consistency, because it's got to be sheer and see-through. By adding all that water and that white, it's not going to show up opaque at all. It's going to be translucent and see-through. And we're going to use our finger again to do this technique. So I'm applying that paint with the brush first, and then I'm taking my finger and smearing it in a circular direction. See, I'm smearing it. It's creating that smoky effect. So paint in little circular strokes. Take your finger and kind of smearing it upwards. I'm kind of making the bottom part brighter. See, I'm smearing it up. It's doing that because it's very watered down. If yours isn't doing that, you likely need to water down your paint even more. And don't do this on an easel. If you were doing this on an easel, your paint would be dripping right now. Do this flat on the surface. So take your brush, smear an area, take your finger and smear it. Kind of smear it upwards so that bottom part is a little bit brighter. Smears up, create some variety so that white fades away differently. So take your brush, paint an area, take your finger, smear it up. And the direction I'm going, I'm kind of making it go in a direction. And see how that bottom part of that smoke is brighter? I'm smearing it up. You don't want to overdo it because we don't want it to be opaque. You can add a little bit of smoke in other areas, but leave it very sheer. So that is how we create that effect. The rest of this tutorial is pretty much going to demonstrate how to do some touch-ups in this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a second coat of red. Obviously, I can't do it everywhere because my wreath and a lot of things are kind of in the way, but I'm just going to go in there and brighten up my red a little bit with this second coat so that my red shows up brighter. I'm just kind of doing that in areas without going over the details that are already painted over that. Just a little few touch-ups in red. You can do the same thing with the green, so just adding that second coat in there brightens up your train a little bit, especially if it looks too dim compared to the rest of the painting. You can brighten that up. I brightened up my wheels as well. Then this is a small minor detail, but you know how I did the little shiny things on the train? I wanted to do those on the ornament as well. So get my brush, get it a nice tip by pinching the bristles. But on the upper left parts of my ornaments, I did like a little shiny, so I did little curved line and then the little diagonal lines kind of sticking out of it. I don't want to ruin my ornament, so I did that on the outside of that. So that makes it look like the ornaments are shining. And I did some shiny pieces elsewhere on the train as well. So if you look at the finished version of this, so I did a shiny piece right there, there is a candy cane. And also my smoke, I added some more smoke that kind of went up. So this area right here is super blank, and I decided to get that smoke up there so that it covers some of that blank area, kind of completes the painting a little bit so it's not so blank up there. And then the candy cane, very simple. I just did white first for the J shape. So you just take white and paint your J shape. And then wait for that white to dry and then go back with the red and do your red stripes. Super simple, kind of makes that composition, that candy cane kind of overlaps the smoke a little bit, kind of brings it together with the tree and also makes it look more fun and Christmassy. I'm sure there's other little details you can add to this as well if you want. But that is it. This is the conclusion of how to paint Christmas train on a black canvas. I hope you enjoyed painting with me. Thanks for watching and thanks for painting with me.